Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film, Out of the Furnace. Russell Baze, played by Christian Bale, his younger brother Rodney, played by Casey Affleck, who is between various trips to Iraq, live in a Rust Belt town. Russell's always looking out for Rodney, clearing up his debts, doing things like that, and then he gets in a drunk driving accident and is sent to jail, and his brother gets involved in backwoods boxing. When Russell eventually gets released, he's trying to set his life right, but he's also trying to get Rodney from going and doing this boxing thing once he finds out, but then Rodney disappears because he wants to do boxing in this crazy, very crime-filled, meth-ridden place in New Jersey. I think they're in Pennsylvania, and he disappears, and then Russell is on a mission to find him and get revenge if anything had happened to him. Out of the Furnace, which is directed by Scott Cooper. I didn't actually see Scott Cooper's last film, but I find this film very comparable to films like A Place Beyond the Pines and Mud, and kind of this whole idea of doing these very 70s influenced small town films. Most of the time I don't really like those films. This film really does feel like a 70s film, and in kind of almost like a 70s mainstream 70s film, but the best of what that was and how dark that could be. And this film's very dark and grim and almost gothic, but also very violent. It's kind of like a more novelistic auteur genre kind of film, very Death Wish influenced in a lot of ways, taking the law into your own hands when the law won't take as much responsibility. Although I do think the lawman, who's played by Forrest Whitaker, does do a pretty good job as really involving the family and letting them know, and I don't think he did a bad job. It's just that Woody Harrelson's character, who has taken Casey Affleck, is just so evil and so able to evade the police. Christian Bale has to take the law in his own hands, I guess. This is by no means like a perfect movie. I think sometimes it likes to be like a 70s film, but then wants to be like your friend when you're watching a movie who needs to over-explain things because they're afraid you won't get it. And there's a particular scene where Christian Bale is upset and he's worried about his brother, and then it cuts to, looks like trying to be home movies of like these two kids playing. When I was watching the scene before that happened, I knew he was thinking about his brother. It didn't need to explain that to me. And there are a couple sequences where it did felt like the director was a friend sitting on the couch with you, over explaining something that you might not get on a first viewing, even though, you know, you really shouldn't do that. That's really annoying, and you especially shouldn't do that as a director. And I felt like he has a lot of confidence in the audience, but every now and then he really needs to drive something home, and I'm wondering what exactly that is. If that's a studio decision, it feels more modern and almost anti what he's going for with the rest of the film. There's an opening with Woody Harrelson's character I thought was really cool when I watched it, but now that I think about it, you could have cut that out of the movie. You could have just started it and had this kind of more genre film approach like this. I mean, what was the point in scaring you at that point? There's another part where Rodney, when he goes into the backwoods to box, and then it's cutting between Sam Shepard and Christian Bale going hunting. That was a bit too much. I mean, when he tries to be experimental and he tries to do something that's stray from more of a 70s novelistic approach, I think this film definitely suffers. But when it's in what it's trying to do, it's actually very strong, and I think it's stronger than I really expected. Christian Bale kind of is anchoring the whole film, so it's not a very showy performance. I noticed he's been doing that a lot, whether it's in a Batman movie or this. If he's the star of the film, it's not as showy. They do some showy parts, which him and Casey Affleck have a few parts that are look like just Oscar clips almost. I wish they hadn't done that, because I feel like their performances were stronger than that for the most part. When they did that, it's like leaning on like the crutch of a modern cinema. Prep the audience, like, I don't want to distance you too much. I don't want to be too crazy. Woody Harrelson in this movie is just simply incredible. He's very dark. He's one of the best villains I think I've seen this whole year, and he's very scary, and he even has his voice a lot lower than it usually is. For a while, I just see Woody Harrelson as kind of like a fun character actor. He's like a funny guy, and I haven't seen him play a villain since maybe like Natural Born Killers. Maybe he has since then, but this is the first time I've seen him play a villain in a while, and he was very terrifying, very dark, almost like a Disney villain or a Darth Vader or something. This film, as much as it plays with being a darker 70s film, in a way is like Marathon Man. I like Marathon Man, but that can play to a regular audience, a mainstream audience. And I think this film, as much as it has a lot of art house tendencies, it plays better to a mainstream audience than I think Mud or Place Beyond the Pines. And Woody Harrelson's character is a big part of that, because he does feel like he's like the villain in Sleeping Beauty or something. Casey Affleck and Christian Bale, I think, are evenly matched. They're kind of like weird, anti-Hollywood actors working together. Even Forrest Whitaker had a strange voice, but all the supporting characters, you know, this film seemed to go for the kind of the hero myth idea because Christian Bale was so central to everyone and everything that was going on in the film. But then everybody else did feel like a real fleshed out character, like you could feel like you understood that they had a life outside of this storyline, rather than in a lot of films, I think you don't really get the sense of that. Except for maybe Sam Shepard's part, they do very much feel like they have their own lives. Everything, life is going on outside of the drama of this movie. I didn't see Crazy Heart, and Scott Cooper, I think, very much surprised me with this film because of how dark it really was and how sinister it was and how it's kind of more of a 70s Republican idea, which isn't like the coolest thing in the world. If Scott Cooper had just really gone with that, this could have been a really good kind of genre, almost Death Wishy kind of film. And when he doesn't commit to that, it hurts this film so much. He just really needed to stick more to its genre roots rather than trying to appeal to the mainstream audience. But I still think this is a really strong movie, and I think as a kind of darker, almost revenge film, it's got a lot more going on with it that makes me actually kind of interested to see the next Scott Cooper movie. I wasn't fully as invested in this film, but I think it works better than I've seen from a lot of these small town films. It's kind of one of the first real somber action oriented films I've seen in a while that really works excellently. I'm not in love with it, but I definitely think it's a better movie than I really expected. I think that's really because of the way in which the story was told. It is kind of like a novelistic approach to a genre Death Wish pick. It makes it a very kind of different movie, you know, as much as it's like a lot of these small town indie movies, it's like completely different as well. And that's why I appreciate it so much, why I like it so much, because it's really kind of its own unique vision. It's so like uncompromising in its somberness and its darkness, but I wish if you're going to be uncompromising and going to be somber and dark, just let the audience deal with it in their own kind of modest way. Don't sit there and go, okay, so right now he's thinking about his brother. It has faith in its audience, but it needs to have more faith in its audience. And that's what's really kind of held it back in the end, unfortunately. So if you have seen Out of the Furnace and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.